Hello and welcome to our weekly podcast. Now, I don't know about you, but this lockdown has been a good time for me to catch up on a bit of reading. There's nothing like being forced to stay in your home to encourage you to get through that pile of books you've been leaving for another day. From what I've seen online, there seem to have been, mostly speaking, two different approaches to reading during this crisis. Some people have been looking for light entertainment. They've been looking for fun, easy reading to take their mind off things. But other people, on the other hand, have decided to look straight into the abyss to find the darkest, the most pessimistic books they can find, which seem to fit the moment that we're in. And there's no genre of books that is darker or more pessimistic than that of dystopias. A dystopia is where an author imagines what the world would look like in the worst case scenario. If everything went wrong that could possibly go wrong, what would the world be like? Rummaging around at home, I was able to find three dystopian classics. First, an old school one, The Time Machine, where a time traveller goes hundreds of thousands of years forward into the future, only to find humanity divided and the earth in decline. Perhaps the most famous dystopia, George Orwell's 1984, a book where the government is always watching you to see if you're committing any thought crimes. And also The Handmaid's Tale, a different sort of dystopia where a religious group have taken over society and women's rights have been completely taken away. It's clear that this idea of a dystopian future fascinates us. Stories like A Brave New World, Children of Men, The Hunger Games, Mad Max even, they all give us the worst case scenario, how things could go so badly wrong. But by imagining these terrible outcomes, we learn the risks there are to our society, and it helps us to avoid them. But that got me thinking. We have so many stories about dystopias, but we don't have nearly as many stories about utopias. Now, utopia is the opposite of a dystopia. If a dystopia makes us imagine the worst case scenario, then a utopia is about imagining the best case scenario. What would the world look like if everything went right? If we got our way completely and we were able to live in the kind of world we'd want to live in? I find it really fascinating that we spend so much time thinking about how society could go so terribly wrong, and yet so little time thinking about what sort of a world we would actually want to live in if we had the chance. Our passage today is an attempt to answer that question. It comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 65, and it paints a picture of a world put right. Our reading today comes from Isaiah 65, reading from verse 17, and today I'm reading from the Message translation. Pay close attention now. I'm creating new heavens and a new earth. All of the earlier troubles, chaos and pain are things of the past to be forgotten. Look ahead with joy. Anticipate what I'm creating. I'll create Jerusalem as sheer joy. Create my people as pure delight. I'll take joy in Jerusalem, take delight in my people. No more sounds of weeping in the city, no more cries of anguish. No more babies dying in the cradle or old people who don't enjoy a full lifetime. 100th birthdays will be considered normal. Anything less will be seen like a cheat. They'll build houses and move in. They'll plant fields and eat what they grow. No more building a house that some outsider takes over. No more planting fields that some enemy confiscates. For my people will be as long-lived as trees. My chosen ones will have satisfaction in their work. They won't work and have nothing come of it. They won't have children snatched out from under them. For they themselves are plantlings blessed by God, with their children and grandchildren, likewise God blessed. The world that Isaiah is describing here truly is a utopia. It's a world where infant mortality is 0, where life expectancy is over 100, where homelessness, unemployment and war, they've all been eradicated. People are able to live a long and happy life and enjoy the fruits of their labour. Who wouldn't want to live in a world like that? Who wouldn't want a society where everyone can live that sort of life? That really is a utopia. At a time like this, that sort of optimism can seem fanciful. But this passage, it's not like those fictitious utopias and dystopias in books. It's a prophecy. It's God saying, this is what the world will look like one day. And in the present circumstances, that is an incredibly hopeful message. When things feel off the rails, we can hold on to that promise. That things can and will get better. That one day all things will be put right and we will all be able to live in peace. But with this incredible message of hope, there are two traps that we can fall into. One is to sit on our hands. With passages like Isaiah 65, it can be tempting to say, well, God is going to fix everything, so nothing on earth really matters. As long as I believe in Jesus, I've got my ticket to heaven, and I don't need to worry myself with practical concerns. The problem with this attitude is it's not really following Jesus, is it? Jesus commanded his followers to tend to the sick, give to the poor, set prisoners free, and welcome foreigners, women and children as equals. Jesus was not a sit quietly and wait for God to sort everything out kind of person. He was a roll up his sleeves and get involved in the messiness of the world sort of person. And if we're going to be followers of Jesus, then that's our job too. We're not told to sit on our hands. We're told to roll up our sleeves and work for a better world. There is, however, also the opposite trap. The idea that we can usher in the utopia all on our own. All throughout Christian history, there have been people inspired by passages like Isaiah 65 who tried to build the perfect society from the ground up. In communities like the Shakers, the Jesus Army, and in the New Harmony community, people tried to throw away the old and establish a perfect new society. However, very few of these attempts have been successful. Quite a lot of them have imploded due to an abuse of power or financial misconduct is a common one. Others have become incredibly strict and rigid. Take the Amish in America, for example. Their desire to create a perfect Christian society has left them frozen in time. But for most of these societies, what happens is they just fizzle out. The strains of trying to live communally with a waning enthusiasm means that most utopian projects don't end with a bang, they end with a whimper. We can try to build the perfect society with all the right laws and rules, but eventually you have to invite real people to live in it, and people bring with them all their baggage. And then what was supposed to be this absolute fresh start ends up becoming more of the same. So how should we respond to our passage today? Well, we should recognise that we are working together with God to build a better world, but ultimately recognise that it's God who is in control. We can only contribute in small ways, but those small ways are really important. In 1 Corinthians 3, Paul describes what we do as like constructing a building. And what we do is bring bricks. Now, a brick on its own isn't that special. But it's when it's assembled together with other bricks that it can become almost anything. A house, a castle, a cathedral. When an architect gets a hold of a bunch of bricks, they can do almost anything. And building God's kingdom requires bricks. When we help someone in a time of need, when we care for our community, when we include someone who's been pushed to the margins, or when we challenge a historic injustice, those are all bricks. Bricks that we bring to God so that he will construct something greater. Compared to all the big and complex problems facing our world, our efforts can seem incredibly small. However, we keep making our bricks, trusting that our architect is using them to build a house, a home for everyone. Our calling is to walk that middle path between feeling like you can fix everything and feeling like you can't fix anything. We only may be able to make small differences, but we know that God is using even our smallest actions to build up his kingdom here on earth. So today I'd like you to think about what utopia means for you. Or in other words, what do you think a perfect world, a world put to right, would look like? And then have a think about what will be my brick today. What action can I take that brings that world a little bit closer? And we do so trusting that God can use our small bricks in order to build something magnificent.